For decades, India has been more than just a destination. It's been a dream for thousands of Americans. From Silicon Valley executives managing outsourcing hubs, to retirees enjoying a beachfront life in Goa, to yoga seekers and digital nomads finding purpose in Rishikesh, India has drawn in wave after wave of Western expatriates. But here's the shocker: by 2025, that story may flip completely. Analysts predict that millions of Americans could soon be leaving India, marking one of the most dramatic shifts in modern migration. This isn't just about people moving, it's about the future of India's economy, its reputation as a global hub, and even the state of US-India relations. In this video, we'll uncover why Americans first came, what made them stay, and most importantly, what's now pushing them away. The answers might surprise you. The story of Americans in India is not new. It stretches back nearly 2 centuries. In the colonial era of the 19th century, India attracted American missionaries, educators, and cultural travelers. Many came with religious missions, setting up schools and charitable institutions, while others were fascinated by India's ancient traditions, languages, and philosophical depth. These early arrivals were small in number, but they set the stage for the perception of India as a land of opportunity and spiritual wisdom. After India's independence in 1947, a new chapter began. During the 1950s through the 1970s, India became a stage for Cold War diplomacy and development. Assistance. American experts worked in aid programs, universities, and agricultural projects, often collaborating with Indian institutions. This was the era when universities like Delhi, Benares, and Mysore welcomed American scholars under exchange programs. Politically, both countries found themselves cautiously aligning, and the presence of Americans in India grew, not just as diplomats and aid workers but also as educators and advisors shaping the early decades of post-colonial growth. Then came the hippie trail of the 1960s and 70s, a cultural wave that would forever change perceptions of India in the American imagination. Young Americans, disillusioned by the Vietnam War and the materialism of the West, came seeking something different: peace, spirituality, and a deeper connection with life. Cities like Rishikesh, Varanasi, and Goa became havens for this counterculture. Yoga, meditation, and spiritual gurus became a cornerstone of this movement. When the Beatles visited Rishikesh, it captured the imagination of the world, and Americans flocked in thousands to India for spiritual awakening. By the 1990s, a very different migration wave began. With the explosion of India's IT industry and the country's economic liberalization, US companies established offices in Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Pune. American executives, consultants, and specialists relocated to India, bringing with them not only corporate strategies but also global cultural exchanges. This era wasn't about spiritual exploration, it was about business, innovation, and profit. The momentum continued into the 2000s and 2010s. Outsourcing became a defining feature of global business, and India emerged as the back office of the world. Multinational corporations built large campuses, call centers, and research hubs, bringing an influx of American employees. To accommodate this population, gated communities, international schools, and expat clubs flourished in Indian metros. Americans became part of the urban elite, influencing lifestyle trends and business culture. And finally, in the last decade, the American presence in India diversified even further. Beyond corporate workers, new groups of expatriates emerged: retirees, digital nomads, and creative professionals. Drawn by low costs of living, warm weather, and the promise of a slower, more meaningful lifestyle, many Americans found India to be a surprisingly attractive alternative to the rising expenses back home. From the beaches of Goa to the yoga retreats of Kerala, they built lives that were both affordable and spiritually rich. This long history of American settlement in India, spanning missionaries, hippies, executives, and retirees, makes the predicted 2025 exodus all the more shocking. After all, if Americans have been coming for nearly 200 years, what could possibly make them leave now? To understand why millions of Americans are now reconsidering their stay, we first need to see why they came in the first place. For many, the cost of living advantage was irresistible. In the US, healthcare bills can wipe out a family's savings, rent consumes large portions of income, and retirement often feels financially out of reach. India offered a striking contrast: world-class medical facilities at a fraction of US prices, affordable housing, inexpensive household help, and a lifestyle that stretched every dollar further. For retirees and middle-class Americans especially, India meant dignity and security that would have been impossible back home. Then there was India's spiritual magnetism. Yoga ashrams in Rishikesh, meditation centers in the Himalayas, and Ayurveda retreats across Kerala attracted not just seekers of peace but also Americans disillusioned by the stress of modern life. For decades, India held the image of a sanctuary for those searching for answers beyond material wealth, and it continued to attract both short-term seekers and long-term residents. The country also offered serious business opportunities. With the IT outsourcing boom, India became a partner for American corporations. Entrepreneurs came to tap into India's talent pool, startups flourished in Bangalore and Hyderabad, and manufacturing partnerships grew. For ambitious professionals, India was not just a posting, it was a launchpad into the global economy. For many retirees, India seemed like the perfect haven. Places like Goa, Kerala, and Pondicherry became retirement colonies for Americans who could live by the sea, enjoy warm weather year-round, and hire local help, all at a fraction of their social security checks. Retirement villages, organic farms, and community living spaces grew quietly, hosting Americans who sought comfort without the crushing financial burden of the US. Beyond economics and spirituality, there was also cultural curiosity. Americans were fascinated by India's food, festivals, languages, and history. For some, living in India was an adventure, a way to immerse in a civilization that was thousands of years old and deeply layered. Finally, the academic and research links were important too. Many American scholars, anthropologists, historians, and scientists came to work in Indian universities, museums, and field projects. Programs like Fulbright exchanges deepened these ties, creating a steady stream of American intellectuals who lived in India for years. Taken together, these reasons explain why India became such a powerful draw for Americans. It wasn't just about one thing, it was about affordability, spirituality, opportunity, and curiosity. And this long list of attractions makes the possibility of mass departures in 2025 not only surprising but deeply concerning. Today, the number of Americans living in India is larger than most people imagine. Exact figures are hard to pin down, but estimates suggest that when you include long-term expatriates, digital nomads, retirees, corporate staff, and NGO workers, the total reaches into the millions. Some stay for only a year or two, others settle for decades. Together, they form a diverse community scattered across India's urban hubs and cultural centers. The major hubs of American life in India are easy to spot. Bangalore, with its thriving tech industry, attracts IT professionals and entrepreneurs. Delhi NCR, the political and diplomatic heart of India, houses diplomats, business consultants, and aid workers. Mumbai draws financial experts, creatives, and media professionals, while Hyderabad and Pune continue to flourish as tech and research centers. On the cultural and lifestyle side, Goa and Pondicherry have become havens for retirees and digital nomads seeking a slower pace of life. Spiritual seekers often gravitate toward Rishikesh and Varanasi, where yoga, meditation, and centuries-old traditions continue to inspire new generations of Americans. For those who live in India, daily life can feel like a paradox, familiar yet foreign, easy yet complicated. On one hand, expat families often send their children to international schools where Western curricula are followed, making education smooth and globally transferable. Gated communities provide security, modern amenities, and a sense of belonging. Many households employ local staff, drivers, cooks, or nannies, making daily life far more comfortable than it would be back in the US. Social clubs, expat networks, and meetup groups thrive in most cities, giving Americans a chance to find community and support. Yet, along with these comforts come undeniable challenges. On the positive side, Americans enjoy India's affordability, its rich and diverse culture, and the sheer range of business opportunities. But there is also a list of persistent frustrations: navigating India's dense bureaucracy, dealing with corruption in everyday processes, enduring air pollution in major cities, and coping with crumbling or overcrowded infrastructure. Many expats describe life in India as a constant balance between extraordinary opportunities and exhausting challenges. And this balance, in recent years, seems to be tipping in the wrong direction. Across multiple sectors, warning lights are flashing that point to a large-scale departure of Americans from India in 2025. The first major concern is economic uncertainty. Inflation has been steadily rising, eroding the affordability that once drew Americans to India. The weakening of the Indian rupee creates complications too. While at first it benefits American spending dollars, It also destabilizes long-term investments and affects dollar remittances for those trying to maintain financial commitments back home. Meanwhile, the Indian job market is tightening, and foreign workers increasingly find themselves competing with a highly skilled local workforce. Next, there are policy shifts that directly affect expatriates. India has been tightening its visa and residency laws, making long-term stays more complicated. Rules around business licenses and land ownership have grown stricter, limiting opportunities for Americans who hope to invest or retire permanently. Taxation policies have also begun targeting foreign income more aggressively, creating a situation where staying in India is no longer as financially advantageous as it once was. Layered on top of this is a growing climate of geopolitical tension. Although India and the US have strengthened ties in defense and technology, the relationship is not without friction. Disagreements over trade, intellectual property, and data security have all surfaced in recent years. These disputes sometimes manifest as restrictions or scrutiny that make life for Americans in India more complicated. Then there are the social pressures. Rising nationalism in India has created an environment where some foreigners, particularly Westerners, feel less welcome than before. While most Americans still enjoy hospitality and cultural warmth, subtle signs of tension are growing. Some expats describe feeling isolated or even targeted in ways that would have been rare a decade ago. Finally, there is the ever-present issue of infrastructure strain. Pollution levels in Delhi regularly reach hazardous levels, making daily life unhealthy for residents. Mumbai faces annual flooding crises that paralyze the city. Bangalore, India's Silicon Valley, struggles with water shortages that affect both households and businesses. Across the country, crumbling roads, overcrowded public transport, and frequent blackouts continue to frustrate foreigners used to more reliable systems. These are not minor inconveniences, they are quality of life issues that directly affect whether people choose to stay or leave. Taken together, these economic, political, and social warning signs suggest that 2025 could be the breaking point for many Americans living in India. What once felt like a land of opportunity and adventure is increasingly becoming a place of frustration and uncertainty. The stage is being set for a mass exodus, one that could change not just the lives of those leaving, but the broader relationship between India and the United States. As we look ahead to 2025, analysts warn of a perfect storm of challenges converging on the American community in India. For years, the inconveniences of living abroad were outweighed by the benefits: cheaper living, vibrant culture, and unique opportunities. But by 2025, the scales may tip in the opposite direction. One of the biggest shifts is expected in visa policies. Rumors suggest India may soon tighten long-term visas for foreigners, especially retirees who are not directly contributing to the workforce. Many Americans who envisioned living out their golden years in India could suddenly face bureaucratic roadblocks, annual renewals, or outright rejections. For retirees who've sold their US homes and invested their savings in India, this creates immense uncertainty. At the same time, taxation changes are looming. India's government has been exploring ways to tax foreign income and assets more aggressively. While this might increase state revenues, it also undermines one of the primary reasons Americans chose India in the first place: financial relief. If living in India becomes as expensive or more complicated than living back in the US or Mexico, many will reconsider. The global economy could add another layer of stress. With signs pointing to a possible worldwide recession in 2025, multinational companies may begin scaling back their expatriate staff. What was once a booming hub of corporate executives could quickly thin out as businesses tighten budgets and repatriate employees. Safety concerns are also on the rise. From cybercrime targeting foreigners to political protests and occasional urban unrest, many Americans feel that their personal security is not guaranteed. While India is not uniquely unsafe, the growing perception of vulnerability can nudge expats toward countries where the risks feel lower. And then there's climate change, which is not theoretical, it's here. India has faced record-breaking heat waves, devastating floods, and increasingly toxic levels of air pollution. Cities like Delhi already rank among the world's most polluted, and coastal hubs like Mumbai and Goa are under constant threat from rising seas and monsoon flooding. For Americans accustomed to stable infrastructure, these conditions can feel overwhelming. Put together, these factors form a perfect storm. For the first time in decades, the inconveniences and risks of living in India may outweigh the benefits. And when Americans look at alternatives, Thailand, Mexico, Portugal, or even returning to the US, the comparison could push them to leave in unprecedented numbers. Statistics can only tell us so much. To truly understand this shift, we need to listen to the human stories behind it. Take the case of a retired couple in Goa. They moved from Florida a decade ago, drawn by the dream of palm trees, ocean breezes, and a lifestyle they could actually afford. For years, they enjoyed quiet mornings on the beach and inexpensive healthcare. But in recent years, costs have crept upward, their visa renewals have become stressful, and they're finding gaps in the healthcare system when it comes to specialized treatments. For the first time, they're questioning if they should return home. In Bangalore, a tech consultant from California once thrived in India's booming IT sector. He managed large outsourcing projects, earned well, and enjoyed a high standard of living. But as his corporation downsizes and India implements new taxation rules, the financial equation has flipped. The very reasons he moved, career advancement and cost savings, are now disappearing. A different story comes from Rishikesh, where a yoga teacher from Oregon arrived with dreams of opening her own retreat. For a while, her classes were full and her community flourished. But bureaucratic hurdles and changing permit laws have turned her once thriving business into a legal headache. What was meant to be a life of simplicity has become a battle with paperwork and uncertainty. And finally, consider a digital nomad in Pondicherry. He loved the colonial charm, the affordable rent, and the cultural mix. But unreliable internet has crippled his freelance work, and recent political unrest made him reconsider his safety. For someone whose livelihood depends on online stability, India suddenly feels like a risky choice. These stories are not isolated. They highlight broader patterns. Rising costs, legal uncertainty, economic instability, and infrastructure challenges are pushing Americans to think twice about staying in India. If millions of Americans do leave, the consequences for India will be profound. Economically, the loss of US dollars flowing into local economies could hit certain regions hard. Americans often spend generously in housing, restaurants, private schools, and healthcare. Their departure means less demand for these services. The healthcare industry will feel the strain as well. Americans tend to use private hospitals and clinics, contributing to the expansion of high-quality facilities. If that demand declines, some hospitals may scale back, affecting both foreigners and Indians who rely on them. Education is another area of impact. International schools in cities like Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore cater heavily to American and Western children. If expat families leave, some of these institutions could face reduced enrollment and funding, forcing closures or cutbacks. Business collaboration would also suffer. For decades, American consultants and entrepreneurs have been bridges between India and global markets. Their reduced presence could weaken India-US economic ties and slow the pace of innovation in joint ventures. Tourism, too, could take a hit. If the narrative spreads that India is becoming too difficult for foreigners, it could discourage not just long-term residents but also short-term visitors. India's global image could suffer a reputational blow. Perhaps most importantly, there's the matter of soft power. When Americans return home, they carry stories. If those stories are about bureaucracy, pollution, and rising hostility, rather than opportunity and hospitality, India risks losing a valuable cultural ambassador network. The exodus wouldn't just affect India, it would also reshape the United States. A surge of returning Americans could strain the already tight housing market, especially retirees who may be looking for affordable communities back home. Social Security and Medicare could feel additional pressure as retirees re-enter the US system. For the corporate sector, businesses that once thrived in India may decide to relocate operations either back to the US or to other cost-effective hubs like the Philippines or Vietnam. This could subtly reshape the global outsourcing map. There's also a cultural dimension. Returning expats often bring pieces of India back with them, whether it's food, yoga, Ayurveda practices, or simply a new worldview. This could enrich American society, but it also underscores the personal loss of a lifestyle they once embraced abroad. To understand why Americans might leave India, it helps to compare with alternative destinations. Mexico remains the top choice for American retirees, offering proximity, affordability, and relatively easy visa processes. Many can drive back and forth across the border, something impossible from India. Thailand has built itself into the digital nomad capital of Asia. Cities like Chiang might offer reliable internet, modern infrastructure, and a thriving expat scene, all with fewer bureaucratic hurdles than India. Portugal has become the darling of US retirees in Europe. With access to EU healthcare, beautiful coastal towns, and favorable visa policies, it provides stability and lifestyle benefits India currently struggles to match. And in the Philippines, English is widely spoken, cultural similarities run deep, and visa rules are far friendlier. For many Americans, it feels like a natural extension of home, with fewer obstacles than India. The lesson for India is clear: its competitors are not standing still. Other countries are actively courting American expats, while India risks pushing them away. The good news is that India still has options. The predicted exodus is not inevitable. It depends on how policymakers respond. Easing visa rules and lowering taxes for expatriates could restore confidence. A clear, transparent residency program for retirees and remote workers would remove the constant fear of being asked to leave. Investments in infrastructure, from tackling pollution and water shortages to upgrading transport systems, would make life more livable for everyone, not just foreigners. Strengthening healthcare partnerships could also be a game changer. If India positions itself as the world's medical hub, it could retain and even grow its expatriate population. Through cultural diplomacy, India could reaffirm its reputation as a welcoming and inclusive society. Promoting cross-cultural exchange and celebrating diversity can go a long way in reassuring Americans that they belong. And finally, business incentives for startups, digital workers, and retirees could keep India competitive against Thailand, Portugal, or Mexico. Looking ahead, the reality is nuanced. Not every American will leave. Many will adapt, stay, and continue thriving in India. But the trend of decline is real. By 2025, analysts believe that millions could exit, especially retirees and digital nomads who have more flexibility. Some industries may shrink under this shift. International schools, luxury real estate, and private healthcare will feel it most. But other sectors, like medical tourism, may adapt by attracting shorter-term visitors instead of long-term residents. India's challenge will be finding the right balance between nationalism and globalism. It must protect local interests while remaining attractive to global talent and retirees. The United States, on the other hand, must figure out how to reintegrate returning expats, many of whom left because they could no longer afford life back home. The departure of millions of Americans from India in 2025 is not just about visas, money, or even climate. It's about identity, opportunity, and the future of globalization itself. For centuries, people have crossed oceans in search of better lives. Sometimes they stay, sometimes they return, but migration is always a mirror of the times. 2025 may well be remembered as a turning point. Whether this is a temporary correction or a permanent shift depends on choices both India and the US make today. So now the question comes to you: will India lose its American community in 2025, or can reforms turn things around? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start the conversation.